All right, everybody. I got another very special guest for you all this week. I want everyone to welcome to the show Warren Simons. Welcome, Warren.
Hey, thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
How's everything going on your end, man?
Everything's going well, man. Everything's going well. It's been hectic, but I did this to myself. I can't complain. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, little backstory. We talked to Dinesh. I think it was 2 months ago now, and so we got a little bit of the backstory of the hecticness of Bad Idea right now. But before we get too far into that, let's hear the origin story. What led you down this path? What got you into comics, and then how did you get into the business?
Well, I was always a huge comic fan as a kid. I was a Marvel zombie. I like that Marvel flag. When I was, in elementary school or just a young kid, I can probably still sort of recite the Marvel universe alphabetically. So I had a deep love for Marvel, for all those kind of characters when I was a little one. And I worked in editorial. I worked in journalism. I worked as a writer. I worked as an editor. And I came home one day and I applied for a job in Marvel in about 2001, 2002. And luckily enough, after interviewing with them for about 6 months, I got offered a job and I joined Marvel in 2002 and as an assistant editor in Axel Alonso's office at the time. And it's sort of been 20 years of from there. I tell everyone I think I've probably edited about 1,000 comics at this point in time, and every one of them hurt in some way. So that's my origin story. I don't know if that makes me a superhero or a supervillain, but it's been about 20 years of it.
Oh, you said Marvel's superhero. All the DC fans are mad at me now. So, I know at Marvel, in some of the sects of Marvel, they do kind of the different houses. Did you have a certain group you were editing for, or were you kind of all over the place?
No, yeah, it's interesting. It's a good question. When I joined in, I think there were 5 separate offices. I joined the Marvel Knights office, which sort of handled Spider-Man, a lot of the Max books, a lot of like the Punisher stuff. That's where I began working. Sort of learned the ropes there. I came into Axel's office and he'd just put out we were working on like the Truth and Rawhide Kid. So it was a very interesting time to be there. I immediately was working as the assistant editor on Amazing Spider-Man and was working with John Romita Jr. and J. Michael Straczynski on that run. So it's interesting because immediately you come in right away and you're working with sort of these heavyweight, writers and artists, people that were, I think JMS was nominated for a BAFTA at one point in time. He obviously created Babylon 5, I think. John Jr. To me is sort of our generation's Kirby. Just an absolutely brilliant artist, and just trying to understand what Johnny was doing at the time. It was like I see you wearing the Eagles hat. Someone once said that working as joining the NFL as an offensive lineman was like getting dropped into a blender. So just really trying to learn. It felt a lot like that, like I was dropped into a blender. So just trying to learn the disciplines, trying to learn what inking was, what coloring was, how writers write, how artists draw. All those things. I'd been a fan my whole life, but really trying to reverse engineer it and sort of start to understand the mechanical aspects of how a comic was built was a really fascinating experience.
Yeah, getting jump onto that book in particular at that time, that's like, let's keep with the football puns because I like it. That's like trying to be the coordinator to Tom Brady. What can you really teach him?
It's interesting because for different books you have different roles and different jobs, and that one, when you have JMS and John Jr., it's sort of that book's essentially on autopilot to a certain extent. There's nothing that a 28-year-old walking in the door is going to have to impart a great wisdom on there. But it was a great way to learn. The inker at the time was Scott Hanna, and I remember talking with Scott once because there was a panel that John Jr. drew. And he drew it. He moved the camera underwater. It was Peter talking to the detective in the NYPD, Spider-Man, and John decides to flip the camera underwater on the dock of a pier and just look up. And I was like, "That's interesting." Like what an interesting choice. But I was going through some old comics of mine, and I was looking at the Mutant Massacre from Marvel from like I think 86 or 87. It's like X-Men 210 to 213. I was looking through those covers. And John drew those issues and he drew those covers. And it's just, that was, 15 years before I walked in the door there. So it's fascinating. It's like listening to a virtuoso play, violin or play guitar or something. You just see someone who has almost a complete mastery of the medium, and you just try to sort of absorb it through osmosis. So it was a lot of stuff like that, and I got to work on a lot of really great books in that particular office, and I got to learn the ropes, and just sort of really try to wrap my head around what was happening from how do you build a comic. And it's one thing to, as a fan, enjoy it, but it's another thing to begin to understand how these disciplines work, begin to understand how inking works, how coloring works, how you lay out a page, how you lay out a panel, time, motion, speed, all those kind of components in comics. And it was it was really as good an education as I could have hoped for. I felt like I was playing, center field for the New York Yankees or something. You're out, the premier organization. You're at a place which is dominating the sales charts. For me, I love DC. I love Image. I love a lot of independent publishers as well. Valiant, obviously, I worked there for a while, but being a Marvel kid and having the opportunity to work on these books that I'd grown up loving, and sort of, at the same time watching it sort of seize hold of pop culture with all these movies that were coming out. It was a real fascinating time to be at that company, certainly.
So to kind of foreshadow to what we'll talk about later, at any point did you do any writing for Marvel? And as kind of a B question to that, were you writing during this time on your own if you weren't doing it for Marvel?
I never wrote for Marvel. There's a real strong firewall at Marvel between editorial and the freelancers and writing. I think that like 10 years prior or 15 years prior, there had been sort of there was so much money in the medium at that point in time where these royalty checks would come in and they'd be for 5 figures or even 6 figures, like when these books are selling hundreds of thousands of copies, if not millions of copies. You have, someone who's editing the Hulk book may be writing the X-Men, and someone who's writing the X-Men may be writing a Hulk book. And in that way, you're probably not getting the best work because there's an entire pool of freelancers that are essentially being ignored because editors are sort of scratching each other's backs. And I think Joe Quesada was the editor-in-chief at that point in time, and I got to work with Joe for many years, and he's a great guy. And when I joined there, Bill Jemas was the publisher, and ultimately they had a real strong aversion to having the editors writing because it's just there's the possibility that it will compromise the quality. There are a lot of great writers in our medium who have worked as editors, and I have enormous respect for my friends who are editors, and a lot of them are really talented story editors as well. But they had a real strong aversion not to do that. After I left Marvel, I did write one Spider-Man comic for them. And, as an editor, you're constantly contributing to the comic in different ways, whether that's through, storytelling or generating ideas or working with the writers on the ideas. But there was a strong firewall. Before I joined Marvel, I worked as a journalist, so I was working as a writer. I wrote a book on resume writing in a different lifetime with my wife, which is called the Resume.com Guide to Writing on Beautiful Resumes. So I've always worked in some capacity as a writer or an editor, but at Marvel, that was sort of frowned upon. And also personally, even when I got to Valiant, when that could have been a possibility if I wanted to, you try to always get those checks into the freelancer's hands. You want to build out you want to make sure that, the 20 pages that you're paying someone for, the 22 pages, it's not going to you, it's going to someone outside. So I think that's a good goal of an editor is not to write the story alone, but to try to work with a writer who can generate that story and get paid for it.
Yeah. And so just out of curiosity, if as you're editing at Marvel and let's say you come up with the next saga and you're like, hey, I'm going to publish this over at Image, do they frown upon that too?
Yeah, I think you're probably not going to be able to do that. Generally the way that these companies work is it's a work for hire contract. And for the freelancers, for the editors, you're on staff. So most of the stuff that's when you're on staff, if you're generating an idea and kicking an idea out to a freelancer, or you're coming up with a story concept and pitching that to a writer, which happens all the time with the editors, that idea is for the writers. I think that there's probably some leeway there with some of the writers and some of the editors, some of the companies. But for the most part, if you are at the company expects the ideas to flow to the company, not to flow to sort of your writing for a separate company. I don't think Marvel would be too keen on that right now. I don't think most corporations would be too keen on that right now.
I mean, yeah, that makes perfect sense. I don't know, something that just popped in my head.
No, it's good. It's interesting. It's something that we discussed all the time up there. So it's not it's a good question. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I guess this is kind of moving on to Valiant a little bit, but not only how did you find your way to Valiant, but at what point did you meet up with Dinesh and did you guys form your relationship?
Yeah, so Marvel was good for me. I worked there from 2002 to 2009. In about 2007, 2006, I sort of was able to, I joined Tom Brevoort's office for a while and was able to work with Tom for a bit, and he's a great guy. And I was sort of able to launch a bunch of books on my own. I was able to launch a Iron Fist book, which people responded very well to. I was able to launch an Iron Man book, which people responded well to, a Thor book. I took over Daredevil at some point in time and was able to edit Brubaker's run. So I was able to put a lot of books out into the marketplace that people responded well to, and it was nice. I was able to work with a lot of really incredible talent. My guy David Aha, who just launched the Seeds for Image and is one of the most talented artists in our medium working today. Probably a generational talent, a really brilliant guy. I was able to work with Fraction for a bit and guys like Kieran Gillen and JMS. So, I was able to put a lot of books out there in the marketplace. And then in 2009, I left Marvel. I resigned. I had a great time there, but I just felt like I'd gotten to where I needed to go with that particular company. I left to go freelance. And then in 2011, a guy named Jason Kutari, who worked at Valiant for a while, and Fred Pierce and Dinesh reached out to me and asked me to come in and talk with them and sort of come in and possibly help sort of re-architect the editorial division. Sort of come in and to take a look at all those characters. What would I do with them? How would I go about rebuilding the books? The company had sort of been dormant. Dinesh and Jason had gotten a hold of the IP in I think 2005, and they bought the company out of bankruptcy. And they were slowly sort of diligently cleaning up the IP and going through all the sort of legal stuff that they had to go through when you acquire, a extraordinary asset like the Valiant Library. And then I think in 2011, they hired me and I began to come in and sort of begin to take a look at the characters. What would I do with EXO? What would I do with Bloodshot? How would we take a look at redesigning this particular character? And then you sort of have this bounty of treasures that you have that were at one point in time some of the most popular characters in the medium. I think that in the early 90s, it was Marvel, DC, Image, and then Valiant, as Valiant was the fourth biggest company in the industry. So they had like 20% market share. So you have this incredible sort of reservoir of goodwill, and you have this incredible fan base of people who were dying to have these characters resuscitated and rebuilt. And that's when I met Dinesh in 2011. We started working together and sort of, working hand in hand to try to really make these characters have kind of the imprint that they once did. And it was a real challenge, man. I mean, that stuff hadn't been published in a decade. Nobody believed in us. We'd lost Solar, Magnus, and Turok to Gold Key. I think Shooter had kind of taken those books and gone over to Dark Horse, and we sort of watched those books launch and crash, and it was interesting to see what they did over there. And I had people tell me that this was a mistake. You don't have Solar, you don't have Magnus, you don't have Turok. Those are the key characters. You've got half of your universe missing. What are you doing? I got offered a job at DC at that time, and I passed on it. So people were like, "What are you doing? This is crazy." So it was a real gamble. In hindsight now, it's really people look at it as a huge success, and I'm real proud of it. But at the time, we had no idea how this thing was going to be received. But luckily, we were able to get some real great talent in the door and launch the books, and we got some real great redesigns in. I begged, borrowed, and steal from every one of the freelancers who I'd worked at Marvel with. So I had a lot of great people coming in to redesign the characters, and we worked closely with the whole team inside, and it was a real good experience. It was really a remarkable opportunity. I knew that if when they offered me the job, I knew that if I passed on it, it wasn't the kind of job that would reappear again quickly. Having the opportunity to go in and sort of take a hold of this dormant universe and really rebuild a library like that. It's very, very rare.
Yeah, and how growing up as a Marvel kid, and this is something I'm discovering now later in life, going back to the original Valiant. Were you reading those growing up too? Because I know a lot of the old Marvel artists and writers were doing a lot of the Valiant stuff as well.
No, I wasn't at the time. I'd say that my Marvel time period is probably I'm going to say 84 to 89. You know what I mean? I'd say I was
So a little bit before.
Yeah. So a little bit before. I read a little bit of Archer and Armstrong at the time. It was kind of like this weird alternative universe that was coming out of the side. And, by the time they were really going in full mode in 91, 92, 93, the time that they'd sort of gotten out of that licensed, Super Mario stuff and where they really begun to dig in on, not just the gold key characters and rebuilding those, but, the origins of, Exo, Bloodshot, Archer and Armstrong, Harbinger, the stuff that Shooter really put down with Lapham and, Barry Windsor Smith, that I went back and I read all that stuff, obviously, when I joined the company, and you see, the real brilliance there. You see, why Shooter was such an absolute force is, the editor-in-chief of Marvel, even when you take a look at something like Secret Wars, just a little comic that helped redefine really the medium, and that imprint's felt to this day. We still have events everywhere, and, it's really an impressive run. Then you go and you take a look at, some of the stuff that, like Barry Windsor Smith was doing with Archer and Armstrong, it's really, for me, just some absolutely brilliant stuff that could probably be published today and still feel real relevant, where some of the other stuff has aged a little bit. As all comics from the early 90s have for the most part. It was nice to see. So I hadn't really checked in on it when I was before I joined the company.
Well, that's where you guys really should have been worried, not having Captain N and Super Mario. I mean,
I know, dude. I know. I'm like, can we get the Super Mario license? Come on, we could do this, guys. We could do this. But
if somebody came out tomorrow and said we got Captain N, we're bringing him back, I'd be jumping on that immediately. That's just a brilliant '90s idea that nobody does anymore.
I was just talking with Dinesh about this a couple of days ago. It's a real, it's a really powerful universe that they have over there. It's a really, it's still very vibrant. It's still very, having a library like that, under your control. There's a lot you can do if you're willing to put the coin up and roll the dice a little bit, so to speak.
Yeah. So you and the crew, Dinesh and everybody else, get together and you start building this and kind of reimagining everything. Did you guys have? I mean, I'm sure the answer is yes, but you can elaborate more. Did you guys have much of a plan on what the first 5 years of Valiant was going to look like in terms of the story arcs?
I think we knew from the start that Exo would probably be our lead out. That had probably been the most popular character that we had that was still there. When you look at Solar was a super popular character. Obviously, Magnus was as well, and Turok had an enormous imprint with that video game. So those were ones that might have been the most popular in pop culture to a certain extent, just because the Gold Key stuff had been published for so many years before Valiant. But we knew that Exo was one that we were going to lead out with, and Bloodshot and Harbinger. We knew that those were three. And then I think the debate was really whether Archer and Armstrong would be the fourth one or Shadow Man would be, which ultimately wound up being our fifth one. So we knew that those were kind of the key books that we wanted to lead out with. Once you get past those five, it gets a little thin. It's not to say that there aren't some other great characters there, and I'm real proud of some of the stuff that we built there, like Divinity or Savage, which they're doing now. So there's when you have a universe, there's so much that you can do to sort of leverage some of the characters off of the other ones. But we began to talk about, the components of a shared universe and what makes it a shared universe. And, initially early on, I think that we were having a conversation that there might have been something with Galad and Ivar and Time Walker, and if we were going to sort of link the universe through, there are three immortal brothers in the universe for your fans who don't know much about the Valiant universe. And one is Armstrong from Archer and Armstrong. The other one is the Eternal Warrior. And there's a third one that was introduced later in the 90s, which is Ivar Time Walker. So we thought that we might be linking the universe that way. Marvel sort of has Iron Man, Thor, and Captain America, and that's sort of the Trinity. And sort of DC has Wonder Woman, Superman, and Batman. And that's sort of the Trinity, and everything sort of builds off of those three. I think in both universes to a certain extent, or at least traditionally they had. And I think that ultimately we came to the idea that Bloodshot was a harbinger hunter. And he was going around trying to kill these kids. The idea was that if we exist in a universe where a kid could knock over a building by looking at it, you better believe that the United States government is going to come up with an answer to neutralize that, and that was Bloodshot. And then we sort of began to build out that way, and we led towards Harbinger Wars. On the first page of Bloodshot, you could see a Harbinger take down like a drone. And we don't address it for a little while, but we knew then that was a good way to facilitate having a shared universe, and then ultimately bring Exo into that, bring Archer and Armstrong into that, bring Shadow Man into that, spinning out Generation Zero from that, which Joshua Dysart and I think Kari Evans or Clayton Crane helped create. So it's fun because there's a lot of, when you have 4, 5, 6 books that can play off of each other, you have almost a limitless amount of ammunition that you can fire, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but you're able to leverage the books off of each other with a shared universe in a way that is unique to those shared universes, is unique to Marvel, is unique to DC, is unique to Valiant, and it provides an opportunity to kind of build out in that capacity. So I think once we unlock that Harbinger thing, that's what ultimately I think Sony looked at, and they're like, oh, there are a couple of movies that could be here. I think that at one point in time, before Harbinger went to Paramount, Sony was contemplating doing a Harbinger, and then Bloodshot, and then Bloodshot, then Harbinger, then Bloodshot 2, then Harbinger 2, then Harbinger Wars. So you could kind of see the architecture of something that could play in film, in TV, if it's in the right hands. I'll say that. So, again, that's a very rare thing, especially in our medium. So we knew that that's where we were starting with. I think that we probably also tried to give our creators an enormous amount of freedom. Robert Venditti, who launched Exo with us, Joshua Dysart, who launched Harbinger for us, and really was critical in those first couple of years of helping to build the shared universe. Dwayne Szerzinski, who launched Bloodshot for us, and Fred Van Lente, who did Archer and Armstrong. You don't want to sort of architect it to a roadmap to a point where you're putting someone in a box and you're saying, do this, do this, do this, but you want to kind of lead them a little bit and say, what if we made him a Harbinger hunter? What would you think about that? What do we want to do with the first arc, with the second arc? You want to try to build a collaborative environment with your creators and your editors and, the executives who are there, so that everyone's sort of rowing in the same direction. Because when you don't do that, it becomes an absolute disaster. When you're trying to dictate the terms of what happens on this issue, what happens on the next issue, I think you could probably see from the Gold Key stuff that Dark Horse launched at the time. It feels stale at the time, and you really need to give your creators the opportunity to flex their wings as well, or otherwise it's just it gets very stale, I think.
And did you have any input, or were you in directly influencing the multimedia stuff, or were you strictly just working on the comics end?
I was, we read the scripts and we discussed them, we gave notes and stuff like that. I did, and I certainly, helped with the character designs and the costume designs and the architecture of that stuff. But I was a publishing guy then. That was my main focus. Publishing is such a grueling business as it is. Editorial can be just an absolute beast to get a hold of. It's fraught with peril. You have writers, pencilers, inkers, colors, and letterists, and you're doing 22 pages of new content every 28 days. And, you may have 5 or 6 books that you're launching at the time. And really just trying to successfully manage that particular ship it's enough to kill a man. You know what I mean? It really is. It's such a burden, to manage even a small universe like Valiant, where you may have 6 to 8 to 10 books a month. I think at one point in time, we got up to 11 or 12 and the thing started to shake a little bit because, the wheels start to come off a little bit, and managing the editors is a challenge, and managing, the executives is a challenge. At Comic-Con some years ago, I was talking with a writer who's a very talented writer, and he'd worked as an editor previously. And he said, he's like, man, being an editor, he's like, the wolves are always at the door. He's like, you got the fans who are pissed at you over this or that. You got the executives who are pissed at you over this or that. You got the freelancers who are always pissed at you. It's just so That's a lot to ingest, and obviously Dinesh is very talented with the West Coast stuff and helping get the movies up, and he was able to help get Bloodshot up, and that's a real challenge, man. I watched him, for 5, 6, 7 years, really try to get that thing up, and it's a real challenge to operate on that ground out there as well. So, hopefully a two-headed beast is able to facilitate getting that done, as opposed to trying to bite off more than you can chew at any one point.
And for anyone out there listening, in case this is your first time listening to one of my podcasts, or listening to Fortress Comic News in general, we did interview Dinesh. So a lot of the stuff that Warren's talking about on Dinesh's side, we talked about with Dinesh. I forget the exact episode, but I'll link it in the show notes. So that aside, so you weren't directly involved with all of that. Was there ever a conversation with you and everyone involved about catering the universe to be multimedia friendly, or were you kind of given the just create something good and we'll figure it out later?
Yeah. I think that one thing that we did extremely successfully was we just tried to make great comics, and I think that if you just try to make great comics, what's going to happen is you're going to be in a position where hopefully that has enough of at least at that point in time in 2012, 2013, 2014, that's going to have enough of an imprint where, hopefully something like Harbinger Wars can come along, which is a wholly organic thing that was created out of, the editorial working with the freelancers, as opposed to trying to build something. Because the thing is that it's a constantly moving target. If you're trying to, cater to Hollywood or TV, it's just such a myriad of hoops that you need to jump through there that by the time you ultimately execute that vision, it's changed. So I think that there was never, ever a mandate. Just like a bad idea, there's not a mandate for us to, I would never impose that mandate on a freelancer to try to make something that could get turned into a TV show or get turned into a movie. I think that the best way to do it is to just try to make a great story, try to come up with a great character, try to come up with a great idea. And then hopefully those things in time will ultimately, find their way into pop culture in other forms. Like I was lucky enough to work on a bunch of the Marvel books that have since been turned into other media. I was, I launched the Spider-Man Noir book back in 2007, 8 or 9, I forget. I helped oversee the costume design of that with Marko Djurdjevic, and worked with Joe on that, and worked with Fabrice and David Hein, the writers, and Carmine, who's the artist. And suddenly you turn around, he's in Into the Spider-Verse, which is one of my favorite superhero movies. Or I edited the Thor book that had the first appearance of female Loki, which became an instrumental part of the Disney show, the Loki show. Or you work with I was the assistant editor at the time on the Truth book when I joined Marvel first. That was coming out, so you get to see all these things that you work on. But I don't think anyone's ever attempting to build that to satisfy film. I mean, it's a different beast probably right now at Marvel. I don't know what the challenges are there. It's a whole different thing. But at the time, there was no pressure, no mandates in that capacity. And I think that, I'm a publishing guy, I'm a pen and ink guy. That's where I live. That's what I love. So, while it's great to see this stuff enter other media, and I love to watch it and see it, it's the best. But if you're aiming for that target, I think most of the time it's going to miss. If you have a North Star, just telling a true great story or building a great character, I think you're going to be able to satisfy that in time.
That's exactly correct. So, quick fanboy moment, because you said something. When you were with Marvel, did you work with Brubaker?
I did. I edited Ed's Daredevil run. We took over with issue 82 or 83, I think. After Bendis's run, my colleague at the time, Jenny Lee, who is an extremely talented editor, she's since gone on to work in film, but she did all of, like, Millar's Wolverine Enemy of the State stuff. She did a bunch of Daredevil stuff. She did a bunch of Black Widow stuff, like a really good editor. I think she was leaving Marvel as Bendis was taking off as Bendis was leaving Daredevil. So I took over with Brubaker's first issue. And Ed's, obviously a super talented writer. He's got a bunch of incredible, a bunch of incredible work over at Marvel. I'm a huge fan. I just picked this bad boy up. So I love Ed's stuff, and he's a great guy. And I took over and I edited his run for 30 or 40 issues, whatever it wound up being. And we were also able to launch Iron Fist together with Fraction and David and Michael Lark, obviously the artist, and Stefano Guadiano, the artist of Daredevil. So it was nice. I got to work with a lot of really incredibly talented people and edit those books and try to manage those books and sort of launch spin-outs of those books. The Iron Fist book ultimately came out of Daredevil. We did a bunch of other ones. And it's a real joy to be able to play in that playground because those characters are such fun. So yeah, I'm a big Ed fan. I got to work with him for a while.
Ed's hands down my favorite writer in the industry right now.
Yeah, he's a real talented guy.
So, fanboy moment over. When your time with Valiant, did you end up leaving alongside Dinesh when the whole, let's just call it a kerfuffle, went down?
Yeah, I think I left like probably 30 to 60 days after Dinesh left. I was not. I wasn't on the board like Dinesh and Peter Cuneo and Gavin were. They were board members, and I was an employee of the company. But I left probably, I don't know, 30, 45, 60 days after he left. He's obviously my buddy. We're co-CEOs now. We've been working together for 10 years, and I think we have a good collaboration. We have a good opportunity to build comics together. And Dinesh is a big comic book fan, and I think he's got a real love and appreciation for the art, obviously. And he's also a good venture capitalist, very, very smart guy who was able to secure the IP, the Valiant IP, out of bankruptcy, which was very expensive at the time. And I think many investors might have passed on that, but he didn't. So I think I left probably 60, 90 days after. There was some contractual stuff that I had to see through. But, towards the end of Valiant, I was, you get I'm good for like these 7-8 year runs. I was at Marvel for 7 years. I was at Valiant for 7 years. But I think after that, you put so much into the books, all the editors that I was able to work with, all the executives that I was able to work with. Comics is a very grueling experience. It's not easy. It's like a series of battles, but the war is never won. So even at a little publisher like Valiant, you might be able to launch an EXO book and sell 90 or 95,000 copies and, put Matt on the book and bring Matt into the Valiant universe, Matt Kint, who's obviously doing a ton of us for Bad Idea now, and bring Tomas Giorello in and, sort of have a real hit book. But then the next month out, that lead out might sell, 11,000 copies or 15,000 copies. So you're always in a position where you're trying to continue to spike the books and feed the publishing line. And then ultimately, hopefully some of that stuff comes out. And as you noted earlier, it leads into mass where you could have a TV show or a film or an option, something along those lines. So, it's a constant struggle, especially in a space like Valiant or like Bad Idea, where it's an uphill slug and you don't sort of have you're not under a corporate umbrella like Vertigo was at Time Warner, or where Marvel is at Disney. I mean, Marvel's its own separate category. Marvel's a beast unto itself. But when you're an indie, a true indie, and you're not owned by a mega corporation, it's always a real uphill slug, and it takes a lot to manage the books. There's an enormous tax, especially on you physically. It's not you're not in the Marine Corps. I don't want to exaggerate it. You know what I'm saying? No one's shooting at you.
Yeah.
But you're not walking into a place where there's physical danger all the time. But 28 pages every 22 days, it can be real taxing. You'll find that a lot of editors, it takes a toll on them, certainly.
Yeah, there's blood, sweat, and tears put into that. I mean, So with that period, I can imagine jumping into Marvel and then leaving, and even that being kind of a childhood dream and getting to work with these great characters and amazing people is hard enough. What was your experience leaving after Valiant, building something from basically the ground up, and it all coming to an end?
Well, it's I hope. I love the characters there. I learned to love the characters. I almost every one of those characters. We all played a role in building them. But bringing in David Aja, bringing in Jelena Kevich-Georgievich to design Exo Man War, bringing in David to design Bloodshot, bringing in David to design Archer and Armstrong, having 4 or 5 different people take passes at, Harbinger, launching the Faith book with Jody Hauser. You do put a ton into it. And I think what you hope is that it will sustain after you go. What you hope is that you're able to build something that at Marvel you have it's like the Mississippi. You're not going to be able to move it one way or the other. You're not going to be able to harm it that much, no matter how much damage you do to it. It's such a enormous machine. It's like an ocean. It's a giant river, and you can make your contributions to it, and hopefully those are helpful. And hopefully I was at a Comic-Con in New York a couple years ago, and there was a little girl cosplaying as the Pirate Queen of Pink Hide Bay, which was Iron Fist #7. You see that, and it's an awesome thing to see. Or you see, someone cosplaying as Spider-Man Noir. I went to go see that movie with my brother-in-law, and when he came on the screen, we were just laughing about how weird it is just to see these things take on a different life. But what you hope is that you've done a good enough job that you plant the tree and you can water it, but at a certain point in time, the thing's going to begin to grow on its own. So, it was hard to leave there, but I think that towards the end of my time there, it's like Carson Wentz limping over the sideline with his 19th injury at the time. You know what I mean? It's like at a certain point in time, you just want to try to catch your breath for a second. So, the way that we do it is, hopefully also represented in the bad idea stuff, where we do kind of put everything into it. It's a nonstop job. It's nonstop, and everything that's in your path along the way has to sort of be. You have to have blinders on. You have to believe that you can make this work. Because, like I was saying, in 2011, when I joined Valiant after Marvel, people are like, "What? Like, why would you do that? Like, they haven't published that book in a decade. Like, that's a crazy thing for you to do. Like, why don't you try to go work on the Superman or the Batman office or something?" And it's just I like to roll the dice a little bit. I think Dinesh does as well. So we both kind of have a shared value where we're willing to take. When you're in an independent universe at a startup company, with a couple of newborns at home managing a crossover, you are so far out over your skis. You just have to have faith that this thing is going to work, and a lot of it is just faith and belief. And if you're there for anything other than the books, it's going to be a problem. You have to all be rowing in the same direction. Just try to believe that this thing can work. So you're really out over the cliff's edge, and if you don't have an entrepreneurial spirit and you're not willing for the whole thing to collapse and go away real fast, it's not the right place for you, man. You gotta. I love to play poker. You gotta push all in with pocket 7 sometimes, and there's a real good chance that someone's gonna call you with a king 8 and you're going home. But it's what I enjoy doing. I think it's one of the great things in the medium is that you can move so fast, you can move so quickly, you could build so much. So it's something that I love, certainly.
So after that day, did you already have a plan in place for after you left, or
my plan was
like, I need a break?
My plan was to smoke a lot of cigars and play a lot of poker for about 180 days until my non-compete expired. And then once my non-compete expired, I knew that I would probably get back into it. And we're lucky now to be working with guys like Adam Freeman, who's our head of sales over at Bad Idea, and is as plugged into the community as anyone that's ever been. Adam probably knows every retailer in North America and knows so many tricks of the trade and how to sell the books and how to build. He's wonderful. And my buddy Josh Johns, who's our head of marketing and is one of the smartest people you'll ever work with from a marketing front, and is just a font of incredible ideas. And Carl Ballers, who's our managing editor, who I worked with at Valiant briefly, and we worked together at Marvel briefly, and we've been lucky to have a really long and successful collaboration together. And Anthony Militano, who's our head of he's one of our sales guys as well, and is just great with finance and numbers. So we're able to build a team that hopefully we're all in the same rowboat rowing together, and that's kind of the key to success. I think is just working with people who you trust. They're not going to try to put a knife in your back at any turn and take your job, which is always key. Publishing editorial, there's all kinds of hijinks that goes on at any point in time. Many books have been written about it. Even watching Shooter's career has been fascinating. Seeing him go from Marvel to Valiant to Dark Horse to whatever he's doing now, or some of the guys who were iconic figures in our industry. We're just seeing the career paths. I was able to work with Lapham a while back at Marvel. He did a bunch of books for me there, and I was able to work with him here. He's done a bunch of the Hero Trade stuff for us, and he's been drawing a bunch of stuff for us. So it's really great. I just guess you try to get your crew together and then run with them, and hopefully it's a successful endeavor.
And this crew you speak of is the Bad Idea crew, correct?
This is the Bad Idea crew. This is the crew of troublemakers and hooligans that we're running with now. So these are the guys who've helped build the business, and it's been a real fascinating year to sort of launch this thing from whole cloth, similar to what we did with Valiant, but we don't have the pre-existing library, obviously, that Valiant had. So it's really a wonderful kind of experience to talk with Matt Kane and Joshua Dysart and Robert Diddy and Marguerite Bennett, and just really build these books out and really just float ideas to them or have them float ideas to us, and to work with the artists that we've been working with, Luis LaRosa, who's obviously done a ton of covers for us, and he's just one of the nicest guys in the medium. Or we just sent refuse with Matt Kent and Marguerite Savage to the printer, and Marguerite drew in like 43 pages of the most beautiful art you've ever seen. So it's nice, man. We're having fun. It's like walking into a studio where anything's a music studio where you can create anything you want on the album and just try to put it out there. And it's been a real it's been overwhelming. We didn't expect to have this level of success. Early on, Dinesh and I were talking, are these things going to sell 500 copies? Or are these things going to sell 1,500 copies? We didn't know. Is this going to sell 1,000 copies? So, to hit the numbers that we're hitting and to see the imprint that we've had is really a testament, not just to the freelancers and the colleagues that I'm working with, but you remove any of those pieces and sort of it's a little bit like a Jenga puzzle, and the whole thing comes down. So it's nice to see the success that we've had so far. Great.
So I want to start with Bad Idea at where I first discovered Bad Idea. I had a friend who told me about this weird company that's only selling to certain stores, and you can only get one at a time. And we didn't know what the hell they were doing. But then I saw this video online of Robert Venditti shooting guns at barrels and talking about dinosaurs.
Yes.
Whose idea was that video?
I don't know. I mean, it might have been Robert's. It might have been Josh Johns. I'm going to say it was probably one of those two. The guy who shot it is a super talented guy named Brockton McKinney, and Brockton's done a bunch of our videos. But Josh has sort of been instrumental in sort of the architecture of our, and Dinesh as well, of course, of our absolutely absurd, ridiculous advertising and marketing campaigns, which have been a lot of videos, a lot of fun stuff. We're just having a good time, man. We're just trying to. It's so serious out there. You know what I mean, dude? It's like it's so serious, and we're big goofballs. We're just trying to jump around and have a good time and have some fun and build a company that can sort of just really dig in on the content, just dig in on the editorial, and really have Rob. We worked on Tankers together with Juan Jose Rip, and Tankers is a story where an oil company doesn't think there's enough oil. They're running out of their oil reserves. So they decide to time travel back in time. And instead of monetizing the time travel, their idea is they're going to go back and kill more dinosaurs. They're going to deflect the comets so that the comet doesn't kill the dinosaurs, so that there's, a couple of more, 65,000 years or more oil reserves for them to draw on. So there's a lot of like surrealism and just fun that we're doing. Not everything needs to be the most serious comic of all time. We can have a little bit of fun. So Rob went down to Georgia. He was telling me that there's a place in Georgia where you can rent a tank and shoot machine guns, and he's going to go shoot some dinosaurs. So, Rob's just, he launched EXO for me. He's done Armor Hunters at Valiant. He did, a bunch of our events over there. He did Eternal Warrior for me. I knew that when I came to Valiant, he was going to be one of the guys that, when I came to Bad Idea, that he's going to be one of the guys that I was going to reach out to right away to come write for us. He's just one of the best guys in the medium, just an all-around nice guy. super talented writer. He launched Surrogates, which they turned into a movie with Bruce Willis. Long before movies, and he had that out like he was ahead of the pack with the movie stuff. So he wrote Green Lantern for years for DC as well. Just a good guy. So yeah, Rob going to Georgia he's in Florida. He's in Georgia now. But Rob going down to drive a tank and shoot dinosaurs is par for the course with Rob. He's always up for a good time.
So we were lucky enough to talk to Venditti years ago, and it was while he was doing EXO and Green Lantern. And I agree with you, he was a lovely person. When I saw that video, though, it just, on a personal level, reminded me of this friend I grew up with. He lives in Tennessee now, and every so often he just sends me videos. Kind of like that Venditti video of him, just because he's a gun enthusiast, he collects all that stuff. That's his thing. And it's him shooting different stuff, and he just sends them to me. If you just added him talking about dinosaurs a little bit, it would have been 1-for-1. So when I saw that video, I was like, this feels like a guy that I could hang out with and just have a beer with.
We're trying to have a little bit of fun. We're trying to be goofy, just have a little bit of fun with it, not take it all too. We take the content obviously very seriously. Whenever, but doing a comic about a bunch of guys traveling back in time to kill a bunch of dinosaurs. It's just kind of a throwback to the silliness of different genres of different characters to play with, and it's not all about just the gravity that's everywhere now. It's a real serious time, obviously. So we're having a little bit of fun. We're poking our fingers in our own eyes a lot, but it's good. We're having fun.
Yeah, it comes across, and I'm glad I know other people are, but I'm glad somebody out there's having fun, because I feel like at the end of the day, you're right. It should be taken seriously. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. But shouldn't it be fun? Isn't that part of the reason why we read comics and love comics? That's fun.
I grew up in the 1980s reading the Marvel stuff, and that stuff was the imagination. Not everything needs to be a template that follows a movie that has just come out. Not everything needs to be a template that's promoting the third or fourth key character in a movie that just came out. I'd love to see the stuff in cinema. I'd love to see when I was a kid, it was inconceivable to me that there'd be the movies like this. There was Batman in 1989, and then there was a 20-year gap or whatever. But it's great to see these characters grab a hold of pop culture, and every time I hear an actor complain about too many comic book movies, it's I don't know what to tell you. I'm sorry. You know what I'm saying? But
it's our time. Everybody, shut up.
I'm sorry that people love this stuff so much. You know what I mean? It's nice to just go across so many different genres, to launch with a spy book like ENIAC, and then to a spy sci-fi book, and then to move into Tankers, which is just a surreal time travel shoot 'em up, and then have Marguerite Bennett do an incredible black and white story about a studio head and a horror book. She's got an encyclopedic knowledge of horror in a way that it's incredible to behold. Just even her pitches, you can tell what a remarkable understanding and fluency of horror she has. And then my buddy Joshua Dysart, who sort of has this Odin's Eye coming up, or we did a quiet book, Refuse, which is it's not quiet, it's a great book, but it's almost silent. The entire issue is almost silent. And then Mark Russell is doing a book with Adam Polino, which is about Mark said, I think it's about what would happen if the teleportation tubes in Star Trek were created by a greedy American capitalist. And we kind of just go through this list where we're just having fun. We're really just trying to let our creators create, which is really one of the keys. I think it was one of my keys to success at Marvel. It's a key to success at Valiant, and I think it's one of our keys right now. Is I'm not bringing the freelancers in to tell them what to do. I'm bringing them in so that they could have fun and tap into their incredible skills and tell great stories. So I think it's been a combination that we've seen has been successful before, and I think we're seeing it replicated here now.
So yeah, you guys have been putting out all types of books. I mean, I pulled one right here.
Whalesville, sure.
Whalesville. Yep. People can see it. you put out 4-issue series, these one shots, these 2-in-1s. I mean, what's it been like playing with the different types of stories and how the lengths can be and what you can do?
Oh, it's wonderful. It's just any of the any of the things that prohibit the story that would traditionally be at a bigger company, we've just completely and totally disregarded. Like Whalesville, I think is 30 plus pages of sort of Matt had this great idea of a little boy who got swallowed by a whale, and we kind of go into this whale's belly and we see this little town that's been built there. And Adam Polina, who's one of the great artists of our medium, just an absolutely brilliant guy. He's the one who drew that Mark Russell story that I just told you about, which is called Last Resorts. And he also drew Pirate Queen, which is by Peter Milligan, which is maybe the best book we've done. It's absolutely brilliant. You just have all these different. He did all three of these in three completely different styles. He's just got such an incredible scope of dexterity as an artist. And then at the back of that particular book, we have a 30 plus page story by Tony Millionaire, who's in the 1990s when I was in school, the Free Press in New York City. He drew Mackey's, and I used to read that every week. Just absolutely love it. So he was one of the first people that I reached out to when I got here, and I was really lucky to have the opportunity to work with Tony. He's just an absolute genius. But we can do Matt Kint plus Tony Millionaire plus Adam Polina and put it in a 60-page book and put it out there and make it an all ages book. And that's just something that a traditional publisher would not do. It is financially fucking crazy. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't make any sense from an A&E perspective. It doesn't make any sense from a publishing and distribution perspective, but we like it and we think it's a good package. So we do it. And it's just one of those things where we've been able to just disregard all the kind of norms that would traditionally be imposed on a publishing division, especially when, most publishing divisions now are not really just publishing divisions. The idea that everything's pegged to the A&E of the sales is kind of a little bit of bullshit, but it's kind of the way that our medium moves right now. But it's, sort of the greatest trick the devil ever pulled is convincing people it didn't exist. You know what I mean? So seeing everything pegged to pub, it's not really how it works anymore. But, it just allows us to tell these 8-page stories like the Hero Trade or put them into the back of the books, and or just send out all these free Hero Trade to the retailer and pretend that we're somebody else and that we're breaking into comics for the first time, and have Matt write this and David Lapham draw this. So, all the rules are off, all the restraints that a traditional publisher would have is off, and hopefully that reflects itself in the content. And then also, all these books are pretty beautiful. I think we have the best cardstock covers in the industry. We're doing all kinds of effects on the cover. We're laminating them. The paper quality, I think, is 60-pound paper that we've done all year. We'll see what's coming up for the next few launches. There's all kinds of insane printing problems happening in our industry right now, so it should be an interesting 60 to 90 days coming up. But everything's been a lot of fun to date, and we're just kind of having fun.
You brought up something that's not talked about enough, and I'm going to give props to DC on this one too. The paper quality on your books, as well as DC's recently, has been awesome. And I don't know who thinks about these things. I'm glad they do, because I never in a million years, from the day I started reading comics, it was just glossy paper, and I never thought twice about it. And then I don't know who did it first or which one I grabbed first, but I grabbed one of them. It was this matte, heavier paper, and I was like, this is so much better.
Yeah, it's amazing how much of a difference it makes in the product. Looking at the books, just how thick the stuff is, how beautiful it is. The laminate. Just here's another beautiful Tony Millionaire shot on the back of Pirate Queen. But you could really see it, like even just this, like Tamara's beautiful colors over Adam's work. Just how thick the paper is, how beautiful it is. It feels like it feels like an art object. It feels like something that, and here's some, beautiful travel foreman work at the back on this eight-pager that Matt wrote. It just feels like something which is, substantial and is we value. It's not just something which is crashed out quickly to get it out the door. So we're really putting a lot of time and effort and energy into the stuff and trying to make sure that every facet of it, from the marketing to the sales to the paper to the editorial, is really taken care of and is really treated as the best in the industry. You know, we're trying to build Ferraris here. You know, you don't always succeed when you're doing that, but we're not trying to just get, we're not trying to sell the most cars. We're trying to sell the best cars. And, you know, luckily I think we have the creators that are able to do that, but, you know, it's definitely a little bit like Valiant. It's an uphill slug. It's a challenge. You know, we're really, you know, trying to build a body of work that we can be proud of. And we're not just trying to do more with less. We could probably double our production and half our rates and half the printing quality and get many more books out there, which some companies are doing, you know, to try to just flood the market and turn something into a movie or a TV show or something. But we're not really interested in that. Everything's precision, everything's clarity, everything's, you know, the best in show. That's what we're interested in. That's what I'm interested in. That's what I want to do right now. That's, you know, where I am in my career after 20 years. I don't want to, you know, be in a position where we're you know, paying $30 for writing and $90 for art, and we're trying to rush this stuff out there. We're really trying to make sure that everything that hits the shelves that has a bad idea slug on it means something.
So this is the point. Normally we're not very hard-hitting journalism here, but I gotta take you to task on one thing.
Sure.
You've been telling us that bad idea is over. It's done. We're not doing this anymore. And I heard from Dinesh that you guys are gonna take a break and kind of figure out what's going on. Why are you lying to me? And when's bad idea gonna be back?
Well, like I think we've been victims of our own success to a certain extent. Where again, if you flash back to 2019, the conversations that Dinesh and I are having are we going to sell 1,000 copies of these? You know, is anyone going to notice? You know, so you know, luckily Adam's really good at his job, and Josh is really good at his job, and Dinesh is really good at his job, and Carl's really good at his job, and we've had an enormous amount of success. So I think that we need to catch our breath and rebuild some systems and try to build the company in a way where we're not clocking in, you know, 70 hours a week at this point and you know, forgetting our children's names and things along those lines. I don't think that that's what the next I signed up for post Valiant. So I think we're going to catch our breath and, you know, hopefully we'll return. But if we didn't, we had a good run. You know, that's wonderful as well, dude. You know what I mean? A little body of work. March to December, it was a good run. We're happy. Books are good. Got to work with some friends. I'm happy.
It's just so it's funny to me. It's not something, and this isn't a bad thing, but it's not something you see. Like the more success, doing such a good job, you're doing great things. Hey, let's just stop for a little while, guys.
I'm telling you, man, the industry it's broken tougher men than me, man. It's a beast, man. It's an absolute beast. There's let alone all the infrastructure in place for a startup and all the different components that you have, let alone the editorial. It's a handful. So I think that you can only run on the treadmill at, you know, 18 miles an hour for so long. You gotta slow down and walk a little bit at some point in time. So hopefully, you know, hopefully 2022 brings greener pastures. We'll see how it goes. It's been a long year from a pandemic / distribution / you know, building standpoint. But again, I did this to myself. I got no one to blame, dude. This is our doing. It's just, you know, yeah. Sometimes I'll stop in the middle of a call with the company and be like, "Whose idea was this? This is a terrible idea. It's a bad idea." So, you know, we're all trying not to die along the way as well.
And so you guys at the beginning are talking like, "Oh, can we sell 500 copies?" At what point are you like, let's call Venditti up and see if he's down to sell 500 copies of a book?
Let's call who? Let's call
any of the guys, yeah, but yeah. Venditti's the one that always comes to mind because I love Venditti.
Well, you know, Rob's, you know, the crew that we've worked with for. I've been very lucky to be running with the same crew for you know, we have many new artists and writers here. I never worked with Marguerite before. I never worked with Tony before. I never worked with you know, there are a ton of people who I could throw out here who I hadn't worked before who were working with for the first time. But also, you know, I was able to work with, you know, Lapham at Marvel. I was able to work with Braithwaite at Marvel and at Valiant. I was able to work with Juan Jose Rip at Valiant. So what we try to do is we try to build an environment where we're having an enormous amount of respect for the process, where we enter this with an enormous amount of gravity, so that it's not just, can we rush and get this book out in 4 weeks? Can we get this done in 2 weeks? Where's the pitch? It's good enough. We're always trying to add a big component of gravity to the work, so that we're trying to put out the best books every month. And I think the writers and artists see that. I think that, working on EXO and launching EXO was hopefully good for Rob and his career. Hopefully launching Harbinger was good for Joshua in his career. But even beyond that, hopefully they're able to look at the body of work that they've accrued working with us, and they're able to say that that's valuable. You know what I mean? That's something that they're proud of. That's something that, you want, as I was saying earlier, you want a crew that's willing to be over that cliff's edge, hanging on by a fingernail, and be like, I got it, I got it, I got it. When you get a crew that, needs to be, that needs the safety of a broader organization, that needs the safety of a bigger company, and they want to be a smaller cog in a bigger wheel. This is not the place for that, man. This is not the place. Valiant wasn't really, to a certain extent, either, but at least Valiant, you could fall back on the library. But if you're out in independent comics is a tough place to be. Any of the creators will tell you that it's a real challenge. It can be all encompassing. It could be all consuming. But hopefully you have colleagues that you treat with respect, and they treat you with respect, and hopefully you have a crew that you understand that you're trying to put the best work forward, and that's the intention. And at Valiant, the reason why I reached out to Medici, the reason why I reached out to Dysart, the reason why I reached out to Dwayne and to Fred and to Justin Jordan is because I didn't think that this would be, the fourth or fifth or sixth most important book that they were working on. I didn't want someone who just wanted to check, and that this was going to be something they'd knock out in a weekend and, they'd cash a check and move on. I wanted people who really understood what we were trying to do here. And what we're trying to do here is we're trying to build a company that hopefully one day will be able to run with some of the bigger companies that we have now. And the only way to do that is to, slow and steady wins the race, but you have to have a crew that has the appetite for that risk. And if you don't have that appetite for that risk, it's not going to go well. I can promise you that.
So I guess the best way to end it now is there any part of you that wants to get out of editing and do writing, make your own comic series, do another book, whatever?
No. I love editing. I'm happy to have been able to amass the body of work underneath me that I have. I'm happy to have been able to put up some good books at Marvel. On occasion, I'll see like the Key Collector top 10 list, and I'll be like, "Yeah, I worked on that," or I worked on that, or I launched that. And it's always nice to see, and to see a little kid running around as the Pirate Queen of Pinghai Bay, or a Spider-Man Noir, or a female Loki. You know what I mean? I was at a WonderCon like 8 years ago, and like Iron Fist, Orson Randall walked by this way, and female Loki walked by that way. And it was just like cool. It's nice to see. It's nice to be able to do that, and it's nice to be able to have sort of worked with this crew to build and resuscitate Valiant, and to sort of oversee the sale of that, which was nice. And then, I'm good, man. I jot down ideas all the time. I work with writers all the time on ideas, and I might have an 8-pager or two that I'll knock out down the road. But I'm good. I'm happy where I am. I wake up every day, and I feel like I'm the luckiest man alive. So, I'm not champing at the bit to change disciplines right now.
Yeah, and so I mean, I guess I'll end this with thank you. The time you spent in Marvel, you've named off a bunch of books that were influential to me, to my co-host, who unfortunately couldn't be here today. What you guys have done as not only Valiant, but most recently Bad Idea, has created a new community that I didn't know existed, and now I'm a part of, and is awesome. And that's why I joke around and say, like, when are you going to be back with Bad Idea? Because I hope that you guys do move forward with it, because I think you are doing some interesting, cool stuff, and I think you have a fan base that will follow you when you decide to come back and do it again.
Well, I appreciate it, buddy. one of the key things for Valiant's success was the fan base there, and you know, my guys Sean and Elvin and Chiclo and the whole crew that I was that were huge supporters of ours real early on. It's wonderful to see, and it's really wonderful to jump on the Facebook page, the Bad Idea Facebook page, and lurk around for a little bit and see what people are saying. And that's really everything that we do, that we put into the books, is for that purpose. It's for, if something becomes a movie or a TV show, that's great. Like hopefully that will happen. It will be helpful. It'll help the company. It'll help the books and the characters. All that's wonderful, but that's not what we're doing it for. What we're doing it for is that so that someone can pick this up and put this down and be like, "Fuck, that's the best comic I read this week." Why aren't the other books in the industry this good? How do they keep doing this over and over again? Like, that's what our goal is. And if anything comes out of that, that's key. But we're only selling comics in comic book shops for that reason. We want people who are in the shops, and we don't want someone walking in and buying 40 copies of a book and taking it off the shelves. That's why we have one per customer. We want to support our brothers and sisters in the retail game who are out there, that made Valiant possible, that make this possible. So, I'm a pen and ink guy. We're really appreciative of the fans and the support they've shown. It's meant everything to us. That's why we bend over backwards and try to really, build strong books with great creators, because that's where it's at, man. I mean, that's, for me, hearing someone say that they love the book, that's better than hearing that something's been optioned or sold or something like that,
Comics for comics' sake all the time.
Yeah.
So if everybody out there listening wanted to follow you a little bit further, where's the best place to send them, Warren?
I'm on Twitter at Warren Simons, 1M, 2 R's, 1M. I'm on there if you want to follow me. I post a ton of art for our creators all the time. That would be a great place to start.
And everybody, I will have a link to his Twitter down below in the show notes. And I'll also have the link to the Bad Idea website. As you've heard a few times when talking about Bad Idea books, whether on this show or my YouTube stuff, you can go there and they have the links to all the different stores that are selling the books. So you can find one near you. Yep. Warren, thanks so much for doing this, man. I appreciate your time.
I appreciate it, buddy. Go Eagles.
And hopefully when you guys come back, we'll have to talk again.
Fingers crossed. All right. Thank you for taking the time. I appreciate it, buddy.